Hi, this is Scott. Welcome to the Tall Woodworker. It's been way too long since I made a project video, so let's go. So we're obviously not in my shop right now. Unfortunately, the garage is still a mess from us moving in, and I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to do a shop project again. Hopefully though, it won't be too far away, but I'm starting to get the itch to do a woodworking project, and rather than seeing a doctor about that itch, I decided to make a project for my new office. And in this video, you're going to see that there's this big empty wall behind me, over here. Yeah, okay, kind of in this area right there. And it's a bit plain. Don't get me wrong, I like the color of the walls, but there really isn't much back there. I mean, you got my logo, you got my lamp, and you got my cat over here somewhere. Actually, that's my wife's cat. That's Spooky. He's a cute cat. He's a bit of a cuddle cat. So I'm gonna fix that by making a bookshelf that I can use to display, well, whatever I feel like. It's my shelf, I can do what I want. Now, I'm gonna be upfront right now and admit that this design isn't my design. I didn't come up with this. I was inspired by Zach from Zach Builds. So if you wanna see his video, make sure that you go and take a look at that. I'll put a link to his video that inspired me in the description. However, I am making a couple of changes to his build, and I'll talk more later about those changes. Now, before I get started, I need to thank my Patreon supporters because they sponsored this video. Can I call it a sponsor? They supported this video? They supported this build. I have said in the past that Patreon contributions would only be used to support this channel. And this is my first fully Patreon supported build. My Patreon supporters were able to see this video before it went live on YouTube, so if you're interested in supporting my channel, please check out the Patreon page. I'm trying to include more behind-the-scenes photos and some pre-release videos on there. Haven't quite gotten into a flow there yet, but again, feel like supporting me, go ahead. And if you don't, just watching this video is all that I ask for. Maybe give me a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you haven't already. I don't want to pressure anybody into supporting me on Patreon. But if you feel like you'd want to, I thank you for it. All right, enough banter. Let's get on with the build. So I would have loved to make these shelves out of some walnut or mahogany, but have you seen the price of wood lately? Heck, even the construction lumber I'm using in this video is fairly expensive. But I got the job done. I start breaking down the boards to a few inches more than what I need. This is actually a benefit as I don't need to worry about planer snipe, and I'll get to the final size a little bit later. When I picked out these boards, I made sure that there weren't any twists or bows in the board. So what was left were some cup boards, and cupping is fairly easy to remove using just a planer. I use a pencil to mark up both sides of the board, then I plane the boards with the cup facing downward. This way the edges of the board are supported on the planer bed. When there were no more pencil marks on the board, I could flip it over and flatten out the other side. Pass every board through the planer until they were all flat. Now, if you ever worked with construction lumber before, you know that the edges are typically rounded over, and this was no exception. I took a little bit off one edge of each board, then I could adjust the fence over just a tiny little bit to cut the final depth for each board. This measurement was the same for both the long and short pieces. Now time to cut the boards to final length. On the longer boards, I had to measure each one to get the length just right. Even with the extension arm on my sled, there's no easy way to incorporate a stop block. It wasn't too much of an issue, and I got all 5 shelves about the same-ish length. Close enough. For the shorter pieces, I started by squaring up one end, and then I decided to use the rip fence to cut the final length. Still can't find that cat's Moses stop block that I had on the sled, and I really didn't want to go hunting around for it. In the end, I had all pieces nice and square. Next, I sanded all boards to 180 grit to prepare them for stain. But, let's be honest, you don't really want to see me sanding, do you? I mean, I hope not. Okay, so, let's stop woodworking for just a bit. Yeah, I know, I'm a tall woodworker, but we're gonna get back to wood later. This is where my build skews a bit from Zach's build. In his build, he used angle iron, and that's great. However, I'm not super comfortable cutting steel. So I actually decided to use angle aluminum. Best part about using aluminum is you can cut it with standard basic woodworking tools. So in the next shots, you'll see me cutting the aluminum with a miter saw. Now, fair warning, I'm still getting used to my shop and everything else like that. And I didn't realize until after I had cut all the pieces that the lighting was horrible. So I tried to fix it in post, but well, sorry. So I set up my stop to be the length I needed, and then I go to town cutting up the aluminum. You can see how easy it is to cut aluminum with your woodworking tools, but please, if you cut aluminum, make sure you're wearing proper protection. These are metal shards flying around. You really don't want to get one of those in your eye. Have you ever gotten wood dust in your eye? That's annoying enough. Imagine a piece of metal in there. Ugh. After cutting all the lengths and adjusting the lighting levels on the camera, I mark out where I need to drill out all the holes for the bolts I'm going to use later. Then I take the pieces over to the drill press and use a stepped drill bit to open up the holes. Both the holes in each bar go on the same side so they can be secured later from either the front or the back of the shelves, but not from the sides. Using that bit leaves a clean edge on one side but a lot of burrs on the other. So using a hand drill, I can remove the burrs, then I use a bench sander to clean up all of the edges. Next, it's time for paint. I really wanted to make sure the paint adheres well, so I started with a primer designed for aluminum. Typical spray paint etiquette here, it's better to use multiple thin coats than fewer thick coats. After the primer is dry, I use a matte black enamel spray paint to color these up. The nice thing about spraying black paint over white primer is you can tell the spots you've missed. Just like before, several thin coats is way easier to deal with. This is especially true with the enamel paint as it dries in minutes. Alright, let's go back to the wood and finish it up. I had a really hard time deciding what color I wanted to stain these, but I ended up using Minwax Early American. I really like the color and it's a good contrast to the black aluminum. As with any stain, you want to cover up the surface and let it soak in, then wipe away the excess. This is technically another thing I changed from Zach's build. He used poly shades, which is a stain and poly in one. I've used that stuff before and honestly, I really don't like the way that it applies. And I believe Zach said the same thing in his video. For the clear coat, I like to use lacquer because it goes on easily and dries quickly. Normally, I use spray cans, but since my garage is a disaster, there was really no way I could control the overspray. So I brushed it on with a high quality brush and got a really nice smooth finish. I applied 3 coats to each board, sanding with 400 grit before applying the final coat, and this gave a nice buttery smooth finish. Now let's go assemble this thing. I brought up all the pieces to my office to assemble there. It seems odd, but it would have been really difficult to bring the finished project up the stairs. I can't tell you how long I spent thinking on how to assemble this without getting in my own way. If I built the unit one shelf at a time, then a riser, then shelf, then riser, I would have had issues getting my drill in between some of the boards. So instead, I attached a riser to each shelf first. This way, when I do the full assembly, I'm only going to be drilling downward and not between the shelves. You'll see. I didn't want the bottom shelf to sit directly on the carpet, so I added feet to raise it up slightly. Looking at it now, it doesn't make too much of a difference, but hey, I tried. So now the tricky part. Unfortunately, with all that planning, I didn't think to make a spacer template. So I ended up using the top shelf as a standoff while I put one shelf on top of another, along with a right-angled clamp holder to get it most of the way there. I could then line up the next shelf and clamp it down and send in some screws. I made sure to pre-drill far enough in so that the screws for the aluminum would not get in the way. To screw in the aluminum, I set up a clamp in spanner mode to hold the shelf parallel to the other. I could then pre-drill my holes, then secure the aluminum. When I removed the clamp, this was very secure. Now it's time to repeat the process for each level. I even had supervisor number 3 watching to make sure I was doing it right. I got 2 paws up for this build. And that's the build. Thanks for watching. Oh, you actually want to see some close-ups of it and see it decorated. Fine. Happy? And that's the final piece. I'm honestly really happy with the way that it turned out. This was a very approachable project, even without a workshop fully set up, so something that anybody can take care of. I mean, heck, I'm glad I just finally got a chance to make a project since the move. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Go ahead and click the like button, and go ahead and subscribe while you're down there if you haven't already. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think of the project. Is there something you would do differently? Do you like the way that I've changed it up a bit? Now, be sure to also check out Zach Builds, as he does some really cool projects. He does a good job of incorporating metal in a lot of his projects, and he's really inspired me to obviously not only do this project, but take a look at some other things that I've been wanting to do. Subscribe to my channel, check out his channel, and subscribe to his channel too. And until next time, thanks for watching. This is especially true with... Alright, that's going in the blooper reel.